Okay, for those joining this live stream, we are doing a language completeness and consistency meeting with a variety of topics. First on our list, naming of generated data destination option. Okay, so this, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is something we discussed earlier this month, and we came up with the name generated data destination. And I guess after
nobody likes it.
Basically.
Okay, fine. All right. So let's understand where we know we're going to use it.
Okay. So, well, maybe Carlo can give a better answer to that than I am. But right, in functions like speech synthesize, right?
Or, yep, video generator is another one.
Okay, so this is a thing where basically functions that always generate a backing file.
Correct.
Or usually do, right? So one of the, in video generator, it always has to create one because we just can't store that in memory. But with the audio functions, you might be able to say none and store it in memory.
Yeah, well, in some world of the future, when memories get bigger, and everybody has a petabyte of memory on their computer, might be a different story.
Right, but at the moment,
human eyes are not going to like audio. There was a time when you couldn't store audio, right? Now you can store audio just fine.
Right.
So, and us humans, unless we get an upgrade, the amount of data in a video isn't going to go above some value.
Right.
Okay. So go ahead.
Yeah. So Carlo and I did some brainstorming earlier, and that's the first one under the and in the last group, there's generated resource location.
I don't like the word resource because we're using resource to represent our resource system and so on.
Okay.
But what do we call? I mean, is it always a file, the thing that we're generating?
Well, it could be a cloud object or a local object.
Yeah, well, we need, this is crazy. Look at this. This does not show a single use of persistent value, a persistent location, rather.
Yeah, it does, under scope. Or what do you mean it doesn't show a single use?
This is just creating the persistent. This is just referring to the persistence location. It doesn't say how the persistence location is used anywhere. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I want to see here, because this is defining. This is a symbolic representation. This is a different thing. This is saying persistence location as a wrapper, right? That's different from what you're doing, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's wrong to begin with, right? So what is the analogous thing for persistent value? Persistent value has a way of saying, okay, I see, it's a second argument of persistent value, but doesn't persistent value have an option? Don't some of these other things have, okay, persistent value. Okay, so what has an option? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I'm not option? Right, I'm not sure anything has an option, and which is maybe, so in this sense, it's maybe a little bit new. Right, because sort of, right, cloud object, right, you just give it the...
Right, so this thing, one could imagine that it would have as a setting, persistence location of blah, and that's a symbolic representation of, rather than saying explicitly, this file name, that's a symbolic representation. You see what I'm saying?
Right, but it certainly couldn't support arbitrary persistence locations.
No, but it could support some of them.
Right. So the same ones we allow as naked strings, yes, we could also theoretically support.
All right. Okay. So this could be imagined to be so persistence location is a wrapper.
Yes.
So what this needs to represent is it the case that these functions are always going to have a destination, or are they going to look up from this location? How does that work? Do you understand my question?
Not entirely, no.
Okay. All right. So audio capture, for example, is mostly writing to this location, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Does anything read from this location as well?
No.
Not unless you explicitly give, right, if you give it the audio file that you created using audio capture.
As its main lunch.
But not as its main lunch, no.
No. You give it
Right.
as the main lunch, the location, not as an optional, piece, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay. So this is really when the function is going to persist itself, persist things. I mean, this is really analogous to the persistent value business, because persistent value is
well, the persistent system is for persisting Wolfram language expressions, and this is for
it can persist
persisting out of core data like WAV files.
All right, okay.
Assets. Backing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Right. So if you don't like resource, then maybe generated asset location, right? Because it's going to tell you where do you store the WAV file that's backing this audio object.
You still there? Anybody still there? Hello?
I'm still here. Do you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, you cut off for a second.
Okay.
I like the word asset.
Mm-hmm. So do you like generated asset location?
It's not terrible.
Shadi, Carlo, what do you think?
I'd be okay with that. I think the main thing that I was not convinced was the destination suffix. So
you're saying, what we're saying is generated asset.
Right.
Okay, so this might say generated asset location goes to persistence location, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
In addition to all the other modes that we could have, like explicitly specifying something. Sure.
Why don't you like the word destination?
The only use we have thus far of destination is in geodestination. So it seemed.
I see. So will we have a dollar generated asset location?
Correct.
And it's a directory of some kind.
It could
An
be
explicit file.
Right.
Or the locations specified by persistence locations.
Right. So the default will be automatic, which means, choose a location that's sensible for that function, like, Wolfram document directory audio or Wolfram document directory video. But, you could make it. Yes, if you wanted to overwrite your file every single time, you could give it a file name, or you could give it a directory. And
okay, so let me make a suggestion. This $Wolfram documents thing, okay, which by the way should surely be $Wolfram documents directory or something. If it's
I think that's just a typo on my. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm going to claim that should be a persistence location in the persistence system as well. What does the persistence system write into persistence locations?
Local objects.
It writes local objects. What is a local object when it's just seen on a disk? Is it?
It's
a directory
with some metadata.
It's actually a directory with a Wolfram language file describing properties of the. And then any added resources.
And so why is it that we're not using local objects as the storage for these videos and things?
That's one of the. You could just say a generated asset location goes to local object, whatever, that would work.
No, but what do you mean local object, whatever? You mean persistence location local, right? That's
you
what you
could
mean.
do that,
means
but yeah, that means create an unnamed local object in the default
local object store
persistent.
location.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas, okay, but so for some reason you don't want to put things on the local object store. I don't really understand why you don't want to put
because the local objects are in a hidden portion of the file system, and you may want to actually see these files that you've generated.
Okay, fine. So then what I strongly suggest is that we have the exact same idea for local objects with the exact same wrapping so that they can be managed in the exact same way, but we simply have another persistence location, which is this visible file system location, okay? So in other words, which I think is really quite a good idea. So in other words, this persistence location, okay, this will be local, and there will be a local visible or something. Local documents, maybe, is another persistence location, which means exactly your directory that you've defined. See what I'm saying?
I'm not sure. I mean, I am not an expert on the
Right,
persistence framework, but it's not clear to me that that makes sense, because my conceptual understanding of the persistence system is a way to persist Wolfram language expressions, not arbitrary.
Well, I understand that, but I'm suggesting that we can generalize it a bit. Okay? Because we want to keep the same framework, because we're going to have a lot of the same issues about cleaning things up, about managing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So why not use the same framework? Because we've already solved those problems. And this took like a year to build.
I am not convinced that
I
those problems have been solved.
But,
I mean,
if they haven't been solved, they need to be solved, and they need to be solved once, rather than once for this system, once for the thing you're building, and so on. So I think what we should do, and we should have had the person from the persistence framework, i.e. Roman, here. It's probably too late to reach him today. I suggest that we have a thing called local documents here that is another persistence location. Am I making sense?
Well, I vaguely understand what you're suggesting. It's not clear to me that it makes sense.
Okay, well, I think it makes sense. So I'm pretty certain it makes sense.
And not Wolfram documents, call it local documents.
I think it should be called local documents, unless it's a centralized thing for it's for that user's documents directory, right?
No, it's a subdirectory of the $user documents directory.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. But it's on a per user basis, right? It's not central to the installation. It's a per user basis, correct?
Yes.
True.
Yes.
Okay. So that the consistent thing, I think, is to call it local documents. Now, here. Okay.
So there is one point that Itai brought up that I think is still a bit unclear. He said persistent values are not particularly relevant for files. They are more relevant for a generic Wolfram language expression. Well, that is true. Local objects can be used to store files, and persistent location can be used to figure out where the local object stores the file. So I've grouped together persistent location and local object, and kind of persistent value treated as a separate entity and not particularly relevant to this discussion.
No, I agree. Persistent value is not relevant. Yes, I agree with you. So this persistent space is also not relevant because it's part of the persistent value part of it. But what is relevant, and persistence path is also not so relevant, although it might become relevant for these things later on. Yeah, this is all irrelevant. This persistent object stuff is irrelevant, but the persistence location is highly relevant.
I see. So you're just suggesting that persistent location of
well, for example,
of local documents would be a symbolic representation of $Wolfram documents directory for whatever the current user. So rather than burning in your own Wolfram documents directory, you have a symbolic representation of that value.
If
That's
it's
what
the
I'm
equivalent to saying
I
local
agree.
object.
Yes,
of-
I agree that that's a sensible thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this can be achieved right now if you use the second argument to local object. You could set that to whatever directory as far as
Right,
my
but see, there are other
understanding
things here, Itai, which are also quite useful, like local shared. I can imagine being useful.
Well, if you're if you have if you're root
If
or
you
you
have,
have changed the permissions on
yeah,
slash
or you're
user.
running, or you're running on some little Raspberry Pi or something which doesn't have a user system particularly. I don't know. I mean, this is it's something where we don't have to rebuild the structure because we've
Right.
already
Well, local share is supported. It's just not particularly useful for right
Fine,
because
for these things.
most users can't write to $base directory.
I understand, but it would be useful. Let's say you've got a class and you want everybody in the class to work on the same video. You don't want everybody's local directory, documents directory to have that video in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So I mean, okay. So let's walk through again how this would work. So generated asset location would go to either the raw location or persistence location of quotes local documents. Right?
Yeah, or local shared or cloud.
Right, but what your criticism of this local here is that it is in a hidden file.
Yeah, I mean, it will still be supported, right? There's no reason to not support it. But
I'm not sure if you need to continue supporting that. I know you implemented that in your branch, but maybe we should just continue supporting generated asset location goes to persistence location local to get that, not the shortcut local.
Sure. But the point is it's just a convenience for the user, sure. But yeah.
Wait a minute, I think you shouldn't allow the naked string because
that's fine.
Otherwise, generated asset location, which you do sometimes want to be presumably a directory name.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fine. We can make that change.
I mean, generated asset location.
Right. So last time you seem to be settling of we should support these as naked strings and then use file to disambiguate. But I'm happy to go in the opposite direction. That was my preference to begin with.
I don't care which way.
I agree. I like that better too.
The naked string is defaults to a file. That's fine, but it's actually defaulting to a directory, not a file, right?
Depends on how it is parsed, right? If it is recognized as directory.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, no, but you have to
decide. It defaults to a file, Stephen. If that string corresponds to an existing directory, then we take it as a directory. Otherwise, it's a file.
Well, with a trailing slash, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to force it to be interpreted as a directory, you have the trailing slash. But in most cases, right, you're going to be storing to directories that already exist. Right. So either you'll leave it at the default and with the auto-generated name. Right. So let me put it this way. $generated asset location will typically be
persistent
a directory.
Location of local documents. That will be its default value.
Its default value will be automatic.
All right, fine. But I mean, I think that automatic is probably persistence location of local documents.
Well, that's
I guess it could be, but it has the disadvantage of creating curl in addition to the actual asset, right? And achieving pretty much the same effect.
All right, okay, I don't know. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have a path here.
Yep.
Okay,
sounds good.
Generated asset location.
One other last thing. When we were brainstorming names, we thought about possibly another option that would refer to existing assets for any function that would want to consume an existing file. And I guess if we call this generated asset location could be the other option. We don't need it now, but I think it's good if you think about that as well now.
Yeah.
It's a little unclear to me what the purpose of this other option is.
Well, I mean, I think that the better name would be persistent asset location or something, and then it will work for both ways round. And actually, I don't think that's such a bad name, because I think for audio capture, if you see that name, it's telling you there's going to be something generated that is persistent. I actually really like that name. So you say audio capture, and then it has an option, persistent asset location, which is often set to persistence location of something or other.
Right. I guess the question is, so it's still not unclear to me what this other option Shadi was referencing
I think that's a
refers
case
to,
where,
but is there a case where both of these would be needed?
I was trying to find a case where potentially both would be needed.
an editor, something that edits. You both have to pick the video up and you have to put it somewhere. But I think in that case, the location is going to be the same. You're going to want to pick it up and put it in the same place, probably.
But how do you specify which one you want?
No, but the location is going to be a directory. Which particular one you want, I don't know. Possibly in some name.
I think the editing scenario you're saying definitely requires two separate options. Unless in a lot of cases now we just use arguments for one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I don't like generated asset location, audio capture, it's not clear how generating it is. I mean, you are speaking to your computer and you are generating the sound, and your computer isn't really generating much at all. It's just transcribing what you said to it. So it's a little confusing.
The function is generating an asset.
I know the function is generating it, but I mean, you could argue that. But I think persistent asset location is a clear thing to say, because it's telling you this function is going to leave detritus behind, right? Which is a non-trivial fact, right? It's not a temporary file.
So
it's a persistent file.
The only argument that I would have, I would be okay with that name. The only argument I would make is that that doesn't necessarily conform to all the persistent star function, just the persistent location one.
I think it's okay with respect to the other ones. I really think it's okay. I think a persistent value and all that kind of thing, I think it's okay. That's what I would suggest. Check it with Roman, but that's my suggestion.
Okay.
All right, onward. Do not get distracted by cosmological rest frames and other such things. Okay.
Yes, so basically we discussed this in June, and then when we had some follow-up meeting, Ian and I both watched the video and realized that we talked about all these other things, but we never actually discussed the item.
Okay.
So
let's go back through the item.
Okay, right. So there is, what is it called? EchoTiming, right? And it has a method option to specify, which can be repeated, which can be either.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Timing, absolute timing, repeated timing, whatever.
Or
so
an
probably
arbitrary.
It should be called timing function or something.
Right. And so, yes, do we want to, basically at the moment we can think of two places where this will be used. Echo timing and presumably repeated timing could basically take two values, timing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? Because I mean, there might be some other places. What about verification tests? Doesn't it have a timing option? Bet it does.
I would expect it to have like a time constrained option, but not.
Yes. Yeah, that is my.
Okay, so that's an interesting thought. Time constrained. What is time constrained? Is it absolute time or is it CPU time? It's usually CPU time, but one could imagine a version of time constrained that's absolute time.
No, time constraint is absolute time.
Is it?
Yes. Because right, because I mean, just do pause of 10 with time constraint time constraint goes to 2, right? That it's not using 2 seconds of CPU time to evaluate pause.
I didn't know how that worked. Is that right? If I say time constrained?
Well, this fact actually means large portions of functionality, particularly in calculus, give different results depending on how busy your system is, how fast your system is, and
Yeah,
why
but
an idea of an operation constraint came up many, many years ago, but is apparently too onerous to consider. Yes.
Unimplementable. Utterly unimplementable, and becomes ever more unimplementable. Did you hit the, how many operations are really going on in your CPU? Oh,
right. And are you counting each core separately for those things which can be multi-threaded, or?
Yes, right. And even much worse than that. I mean, it's hopeless. All right. So the issue here is, given how, what is EchoTiming's argument structure right now?
One argument.
So doesn't it also take a label? Isn't it one or two argument like the other Echo thingies?
Yeah, I think.
So this one you might need the prototype build, because I don't think, has this been merged to master, or is this in the PR still? I don't remember.
TimingFunction is in a PR. EchoTiming
is in 12.2.
12.2.
Apparently not defuturized yet, though. But I'm pretty sure it also takes a label, just like the other Echo, just like Echo does.
You're right.
Which, if we
look, for now, why don't you have a method thing? Why don't we consider this experimental? Because I think we're going to want to change that. Okay. I mean, we could also give it, I think this is the only plausible thing. And that means that the label can't be method arrow, blah, 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 right? You're using up that by identifying that as an option, right?
Right.
Let's tag this as experimental. I think we should solve this problem. I mean, and for now, let's just use this. That's fine.
Okay.
I think it's not a perfectly clean solution.
Okay.
Okay, process, we're looking for deprecated symbols. Okay, can I make a comment here? I am so fed up with seeing in the autocompletes, seeing all these random internal symbols over and over and over again. What's happened to our whitelist, blacklist scheme?
It's still there. Are you sure you haven't disabled the blacklist? And what sort of internal symbols are you seeing?
I have no idea. No idea. I mean, I'm just, if I try saying EC, okay, I didn't get that there. EB. I mean, I have no idea. I mean,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I always have the opposite problem that, I want to autocomplete to my private symbol and I can't because those are blocked.
Well, if you're a system developer, yes, they're blocked, but the private symbols are blocked, but they shouldn't be blocked. Okay, well, all right, I'll have to find this explicitly. I mean,
okay, right. So, I mean, this is perhaps a mistitled thing, but so the question is about Wolfram language data. So the procedure has been that, once a symbol is marked as obsolete, it is completely removed from Wolfram language data.
Yes, I think that's the right thing. I think you should have an entity class that supports them, but the zero argument form should not return them.
But they're not entities.
What
they're removed so that, for instance, the entity count does not get artificially inflated by the fact that we have renamed a symbol twice or whatever. So the entity will just disappear if we remove it.
Well, why don't we
usually do rename it?
Then why don't we do this? Why don't we have an entity in a different why don't we call it what are the entities called in
Wolfram language symbol is the
okay, so why don't we call it Wolfram language obsolete symbol? as a different entity type. Move its entity type.
Yeah, I like that idea better than trying to shove everything in.
Fine.
Wolfram
Move its
language
entity
symbol.
type.
And
then,
would those be accessible via Wolfram language data, or would you have to use entity list? And
no, I think you should be able to get Wolfram language data 0 arguments should not give them by default.
Agreed.
Right, but I think you should be able to get them somehow. I mean, if you type in Wolfram language data of quotes something obsolete, I don't know what's obsolete. Can't even think.
And think of things which
Compose.
work.
Star data. What's that?
I said
Defer.
Which one?
Compose.
Yeah, compose. That's
Okay,
definitely.
all right, okay. So Wolfram language data of quotes compose should give you all the various standard data about it, and it should return as the entity Wolfram language obsolete symbol. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's doable.
And maybe Wolfram language data of quotes obsolete gives you all the obsolete ones if you want.
Sure, why not? If you really want to, honor the dead. So to speak.
Right. Well, I mean, you see, the reason this keeps popping up is that, you complain, why is this obsolete symbol appeering in this example? Well, because we have no way to search for obsolete symbols.
Yeah, fine. Okay, well, good. Okay, great.
So this is what motivated this discussion, even though it's,
Right.
Well, I mean, you could complement everything in system with what's in Wolfram language data, but you probably don't want to do that. It's definitely cleaner to explicitly curate one based
I
on
think
the
it's a good
documentation.
solution. I really like the Wolfram language obsolete symbol entity type.
Okay. Right. So
Okay.
this was just passed to me as something that's supposed to be thought about, but I maybe have a guess for what one of these is, but not what the other is. So
Okay, so I think this is the situation. Okay, so we have, this is, I don't know whether I can do this. Can I do $? Doesn't work yet.
it should in the prototype build. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, fine.
There's an open pull request. It should be merged in a few more days.
Okay, so $. Oh, look at this. Exciting. Okay, frac 1. I'm about to actually use this for a real project. So cool. Okay, so.
Now, did that just parse and disappear, or is that just a box that will? Okay, so it's clearly some sort of UI thing.
It's a box. Yeah, it's a box right now, but I'm surprised there isn't some kind of check mark that allows me to just sort of say this is what I. No, this is a box because it isn't actually. Oh, great. Because it isn't actually. This was a case where it happened to be meaningful in the language, right? But often it is not.
Right.
Okay, so. And I don't know exactly how to get it to parse. I'm out of luck.
Yeah.
Okay, so here are two things. This is what I'm thinking here. Okay, I don't think this is quite right, this LaTeX render form thing. But the main issue is what do I want to do here? So I want to be able to type. I mean, if I type something like this here, import string, frac 1 7. Why did that say failed? Yeah.
Probably it wants the $signs.
Right. So what I'm imagining.
It's LaTeX also, right? That's not plain tech. I don't know if we make that distinction.
I don't think we make that distinction.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. Okay. So what I want is a function. Okay. So this is all not what I want. Okay. Right. What I want is a function that is a very simple wrapper around these that simply does what that control equals thing does and takes this and returns a thing that prints as that displays.
Right. That basically, if you do notebook put of % whatever that %64 is, or 84, I can't quite read, right? So it's something that looks like the cell that's generated by this thing.
Yes,
right?
except not even the cell. I want it to be an inline, presumably, probably an inline cell.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, what I want to be able to do, I want to be able to make a table of, okay, so here's the example of what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to make a table of expressions. So let me give you the full flow, okay?
Okay.
I mean, let me just say tech rendering, that's not the right word, but of something where it's a string here, blah, 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 blah. Let's say the simplest case, I make a table of 10 of these, and what I want it to do is just display as a bunch of, as a list that looks like, whatever it is, table, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that looks like that, even though in actuality these are inline cells or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense? So it's in other words, it's doing the same thing that control equals is doing, but it's doing it from a string that I type in rather than from well, they're both strings I type in. A string that is perhaps programmatically generated rather than just the control equals box.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense? Okay, so then the remaining piece to this picture is string templates for LaTeX. Okay, so what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is I want to be able to put in, let's say I'm making a table of, I don't know, the category theory, some weird category theory diagram that I can represent in LaTeX, but I have a programmatic way of generating, it's it's some exact sequence of, homotopy something or others of something or other, okay?
Sure.
And I've got data, and all I want to do is to put in, I want a 3 here, a 7 there, a 14 there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to essentially splice that into the tech code.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So it could be that string template will just work for that. I'm not sure. Okay.
Right. I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean,
probably it does. We just have to think about it. Okay. So I'm saying that, in which case that will be just fine. In which case, then what it would look like is tech rendering of string template of blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Now, does tech rendering just sit there and format? Does it actually evaluate away to something?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. I don't think it should evaluate away. I don't think it should evaluate away. I think it should sit there as a thing that displays as.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is the right term for that thing? It displays. It eats tech.
And it renders as right. It renders as tech, basically. It renders
the tech as boxes.
Right.
In other words, okay, inside it's a pig. Tech. It's dressed up to look like a peacock.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what the stupid terms. Okay, whatever. It's got
I mean, we could call it something very simple, like, tech fragment of blah, but
yeah, it's not obviously wrong. Does that give the sense of the display? Tech display. That's not quite right. What function do we have?
So the closest precedent, at least to my mind, that we have is raw boxes, right? It takes boxes and it just displays as the rendered boxes.
That's such an obscure name. Yeah, it's a deeply obscure name, which probably should be updated. What else do we have that is, I mean, like there are things that sing and, that display, like graph, obviously displays as a graph, but has something else inside.
Well, I think the problem is that people don't think of what's the inside as being distinct from the graph. Right?
Yeah, right. Tag fragment is not obviously bad. I mean, at least then people would understand it's a fragment. You don't have to put the dollar signs, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go for that. Let's go for that. And that's basically what we want is just an implementation of whatever it is that's working in ControlDollar should just work here.
Okay.
And whatever it is that comes back from ControlDollar, you could use that here. I don't see why not. I mean, that whatever object that is that comes back, it can be put anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? It's not do we really want? We shouldn't say wedge 4. We should say wedge wedge dollar. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, if I say, I don't know enough tech, but you know, okay, beautiful. Okay, so now I say,
okay, and
well,
what's
that's
full
interesting.
and what's full form of percent?
Wait a minute, what's that? That got interpreted.
It did, didn't it?
I see. Yes, so that's interesting. So this is okay. Let's ask. Well, this may be a defer of something like that. So this.
All right. So let's try the following, which is like something like /left, you know, and then the left brace, and then x squared. Dot in the box.
You want something that isn't understandable.
Correct.
Okay, tell me what to type.
/left, and a left brace, and I know x caret 2, and /right, and the period.
Period like that?
Yep. Okay, so I guess it doesn't like it because it couldn't interpret that. Although
it's got to interpret to boxes. It doesn't have to interpret beyond boxes.
Okay, but that is one. Oh, brace was a bad choice. Replace the brace with a paren, say. Okay, because that is definitely valid. Did you delete the period, or is it just?
Yes, I did delete the period.
Restore the period.
Yeah, you need something after the right to be what to use there. Period means use nothing. There you go.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So what happens if you do a table of that guy?
Okay, if I evaluate that guy, it gives a syntax error.
Okay. So it renders as boxes, but it doesn't protect you from. Right. So this would have to be something. Well, I guess it could still render. It could still interpret as itself, but this would be something slightly different. Yeah.
Right. So this here is an entry thing, and this here is a display thing. So this would be an encrusted display that has boxification and tech fonts and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it needs is some way of taking that encrusted thing and interpreting it. So what would be the natural way to do that? So we need a function that just returns the encrusted, stabilized boxes from this, right?
Well, I think that's probably import with some elements, but I could be wrong.
But I'm sure it is implementationally, but that's not what I care about. What I care about is what we want is something which can readily take this as a string and produce this as a stabilized output.
I mean,
I'm sure it's implementable.
Well, why isn't that just tech fragment?
Okay, so tech fragment then, okay, fine. So tech fragment comes back as a stabilized bunch of boxes. Okay, what happens if I want that stabilized set of boxes to now, if I want to now interpret it? You see what I'm asking?
Well, I
expression is a
no,
good
I don't.
answer.
I don't understand at all. Right?
Two
Because
expression is a good answer. Two expression is a very good answer. If we can make that work, that's a really good answer. Because it should be stabilized boxes. And so long as we can make two expression eat those, we're in good shape. By the way, is this not fixed still? This was supposed to have been fixed like a year ago.
what
That
is this?
stupid yellow, the stupid yellow thing.
What's wrong with the stupid yellow thing?
We have a new design.
Okay. I don't think that I have not seen a new design for that anywhere.
It was done like a year ago.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't think it's been implemented, is the short answer.
Oh, damn it. Okay, in any case, I need to go to a different meeting in a moment here. There's a question on the live stream about the Martech package in the community, which I'm assuming we're quite aware of.
We are aware of it. Is there something more specific than just Martech?
I don't think so. But, yeah, I mean,
right. So basically, it's a way to sort of easily embed the tech fonts into visualization functions.
Oh, somebody was just asking me about this.
And yes, I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember the details, but that is sort of its intent. So if you want to produce, your perfectly text-styled plot that you can just plump into your paper.
Right. Okay, I get it. So it's a slightly different objective.
Yes.
But it's interesting. Okay, because this is using our old tech interpreter that was written 25 years ago that actually goes to boxes. So, okay, so I think the right answer is tech fragment produces stabilized boxes, to expression takes those boxes and tries to turn it into an expression. Make sense? So let's see if we can get that.
That would be quite unusual for to expression to have a special handling of something that's not one of the print form.
But it is to expression of boxes is something it deals with, and this is just going to be boxes. I don't understand.
Wait. So you're saying that tag fragment will evaluate away to boxes?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Oh, you would think it would have a print form that's boxes.
Because if it evaluates away to boxes, right, it's not going to display.
No, you're right. Actually, this is not a bad idea. So then, look, here's the right answer. You're actually giving a better answer. Okay.
Okay.
So what you're suggesting is, I like your answer better. Okay. Okay. So tech fragment here. This displays as the tech fragment boxes. Okay,
yep.
Whatever it is, like that. Okay, then two boxes of that, or two expression of that, would do what you would think it should do.
Yeah, that's the one. I'd have to think some more.
Why don't you think about that? I'm optimistic about those working.
Okay.
Really, I'm optimistic. I think this is actually very nice. That's a good idea to have that just be a print form. Very nice idea. Right, because then it's like this. It's a programmatic version of this. Nothing really happened. It was just a print form. Now, I don't exactly know how you seep through with standard form, traditional form, and so on. That's a separate issue. Probably this is like... I mean, it's a little confusing that tech form is printing as tech.
Because it's the opposite direction.
Yes, it's printing as tech, just like traditional form prints as traditional. But this is a tech fragment inserted. Yeah, that's the right thing. This is the right thing. This is good. Now, if we can get these two to work, we're in great shape. All right, I need to go.
Okay.
All right, good stuff. We got through our agenda. Yeehaw.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.